Welcome, everybody. How are you?
Welcome.
Yeah, Janette, I'm super excited to talk to you. Now, this is going to be a unique one because we're getting kind of into the weeds, and it's going to be about finance. Okay, so I just want to clarify that, like, while yes, Jeanette and I would both love you guys to buy our services, this
Mhm.
really is a financial education piece. And we're going to have a little bit of like commercials in the middle, and then we'll go right back into the education. Okay. So just to set the expectations for everyone, especially anyone who has not joined one of my webinars before. So, with that, I am going to do a couple things. One, I'm going to get this presentation up and make sure we're like ready to dive into it. And then two, I would love if you could just help me out, Jeanette. We're gonna talk about we're gonna talk about ourselves for a brief moment. And the reason we're going to do that is because I just want to make sure you guys, the audience, know who we are and why you should listen to us. While we do that, I'm going to launch a poll because I'd love to get to know you guys better. The poll really is going to help me understand where I should like have Jeanette focus her time. So I may like bounce around the slide deck based on your answers. So I'll launch that. Jeanette, how about you give us a little bit about you? Like what's your background and why should we listen to you when it comes to improving I'm sorry, finding hidden revenue?
Yeah. Well, I actually, before I got into all the finance related craziness in MSPs, I used to work in an ops department for an MSP here in San Diego. And I got to learn a bunch of behind the scenes admin, dispatch work. And honestly, I will say, even though that's not directly finance related, it did help me understand a lot of the back end items and tasks for finance in MSPs. For example, the importance of your time entry and, accounting is not just hounding you just because they want to for funsies, but they're doing it because it's important to make sure that deadlines are met. I learned why, right? I learned maybe why something like that would not be met or why it would be hard to find certain information in tickets regarding billing, or maybe why something like that might have been entered incorrectly. So that whole aspect helped me learn a lot on the why in the finance side. So it helped me be more patient and understanding and find other ways that we can work around those kind of difficulties. Um, and then that brought me over to finance. And so it was really great to have both perspective in mind whenever I do work with an MSP.
That's awesome. All right. So, well, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Steve Taylor. I've been all sorts of things. I sold cars for a month. I was an IT professional since 2002. I started my own MSP in 2009, and then I started doing content for MSPs back in 2017. And a couple of years ago, I decided I wanted to start working with vendors and like doing these webinars full time because I think there's a lot of value that I can add to what normally feels like a sales pitch. So that's what I do. I make sure that we have fun educational webinars uh, here at Alternative Payments. So I see most of you have filled out this poll, and the results are staggering. No, I don't know. Most of you are MSPs. Most of you are like the owner, partner, decision maker. And everyone who responded to which of these time entry challenges do you see most often in your MSP, everyone said entries don't get logged daily. So that's a fun one. And then how confident are you that your team is billing every hour correctly? More people said somewhat confident. We know there are gaps. And one person said mostly confident, but there's always a chance we miss a few. Nobody said 100% we're rock solid. But nobody said not confident at all. That's why I showed up today. So that's fun. We've got a couple of partners for alternative payments and quite a few people who are not partnered with either of us. So that's fun. We've got a fun mix of people in the room. So let's just kind of dive in. Janette, why does revenue hide?
So one of the things that I want to make sure we start off talking about, just because of your poll, are time entries. So if people in your team are not entering their time on a daily basis, we want to see why. So could it be maybe it was never enforced? Maybe it's more of a suggestion. Maybe, we aren't holding people accountable. For example, they're just salary. They're a salary employee. Why does it matter? Right?
I don't see a problem.
Exactly. So we want to start asking those questions and thinking, well, we do want to make sure that the employee enters all of their time, even if they are salary. I think it's especially important if they are salary because that's when some entries might get missed. It's easy to say, well, I'll do it later. Doesn't really matter for payroll purposes, right?
Yeah.
We want to make sure that that's fixed. Now, how do we do that? One of the things that I always start off saying is, well, if your employee is a full-time employee, regardless if they are salary or hourly, then they have 8 hours a day, each working day of the week. So that's a 40-hour week. So I'm expecting to see 8 hours or maybe 7.9, right? Something close to 8 hours.
Although it's 0.9, like it's not 7.75.
Yeah, I know. I said the craziness, the 7.58, 2 or something in your timesheet. But we want to get them as close as possible to that full 8 hours. And this will help too if you have any kind of reporting that you do on that employee, utilization, or you're trying to determine whether or not to hire someone else in that department. Just figuring out if it's a good idea to get help if they really truly need it, or maybe can we better, schedule this resource, this technician, and make full use of their time, billable time, that is. So one of the things, again, is just making sure that you do enforce with these employees, hey, you are working 8 hours. I'm wanting to see 8 hours. I'm going to go ahead and reject these timesheets, right? Also holding yourself accountable if you're the ones who are reviewing those timesheets and saying, I'm going to reject this timesheet. I'm going to review this timesheet on a weekly basis. And I'm rejecting because making sure in that section in manage, you're putting a reason. I think that's also helpful to letting your employees know why maybe something was not approved and giving them room for improvement on their time entries.
So are you a fan of the beatings will continue until morale improves type of methodology? Like how
That
do
sounds
we
kind of harsh. But yeah, I do believe strongly that if you continue to tell your employees, hey, I'm expecting to see 8 hours here and I'm not going to let you get away with it, that they will get the message. Technicians are very stubborn, I've seen, and they like to do things their
no.
way. So I think it is important that once that is established, that we keep going at it and we keep going at it until the message has come across. It's just something that is going to be a learning curve, not only for the admin, but also for your team. It's new, right? You've gotten away with it so far. Sending those reminders to and manage, making sure that there is an hour minimum per day is important. The reminders might be a little bothersome at first, but hey, you won't get a reminder if you stay on top of it. Saying something to manage like, hey, after the 4th hour, if they don't have anything on there, send a reminder. If you want to be a little bit more lenient, maybe you could do 8 hours. Just to see what works for your team. If after maybe a week or 2, they seem to be a little bit better at it, maybe we can keep it at 8 hours. Or maybe, hey, they're doing so great, let's go ahead and keep it at the 4-hour reminder mark on a daily basis instead of at the end of the month.
Okay. Now, I'm curious. For those of you that are here, just feel free to toss it in chat. It's going to be pretty laid back. I don't care what you guys put in chat. You can troll me too if you want in there. Do you have, whether it's like an official written policy or more of a handshake agreement or whatever, like how many hours do you expect your engineers, your techs, whatever you refer to them as, how many hours do you expect them to be tracking in their PSA? For example, Jim has a great question, Janette. Why do we need 100% of 8 hours? Like, why do we care about things like breaks, lunch, that kind of stuff? That's truly not billable, and it's not even related to a client.
Yeah, that's a good question. And that's totally dependent on your company policy. There are some companies that I work with that do want to make sure that the employee logs in their break. So if they took the break at 11, from 11 to 12, if it's an hour or 30 minutes, they log that break and then they deduct that from their timesheet. So it doesn't count billable or working hours. There are some companies that, hey, if you're not getting paid for it, then no, we should not be entering that in your timesheet. But it's just dependent on you. It's important to have any kind of admin work on there, I feel like, because you can actually see whether or not, they're spending an hour checking email. If it is part of their job to check their email, great. That's actually great utilization of their time. If it's not part of their job, maybe you want to figure out why he's spending so much time, or she, in checking their email and not the board, whatever board or whatever service board that is. Is there a better process we can make to make this employee spend less time checking their email? Just common practices like that. And just it gives you a better idea of what that employee can do. And it doesn't necessarily need to be just billable hours.
And I see Michelle has some strong opinions in the chat. And I just want to clarify, I'm going to be contrarian just to be contrarian, not because I actually believe these things. So she said, if their salary, like most of their hours should be entered in the C or ConnectWise or PSA, whatever. We're paying you for 40 hours. What are you doing with that time? And I guess my thought is, I hear you, but like if I had a job at a factory, which I did a factory job for like 2 weeks, just because I don't know, I wanted to see what it was like. And I was like 18 at the time, so who cares, right? I didn't have to like fill out like, oh, I pushed my foot on a button and stamped a piece of metal at 11:01 and 37 seconds. Like, they didn't care about what I was doing with every waking moment. They cared about the final output. So did Steve hit his quota of, I don't know, stamping 342 pieces of metal in his 8-hour shift? Yes or no? And that was it. Like it was more KPI based than let's be really strict about monitoring every minute of his time. So why you gotta be like that, Michelle?
Well, I know it sounds like a lot, but at the end of the day, let's just say you're trying to run a report, and it doesn't necessarily have to be billable time. It just, we want to know, as a business owner, you'd want to know where your team spends the most of their time. So if we are going back to saying, okay, well, this is a salary employee, it doesn't matter if this employee enters their full day, their salary. Well, what if they don't enter their full day? And one day you're trying to say, okay, I want to hire another person in this department, but I don't necessarily know if it'll be a good thing. Well, let's take a look. Let's pull a report. All right, now we see all this report on a day where they logged 2 hours, a day where they logged an hour. That doesn't give you much information. It's just telling you that they worked here and there. But it doesn't really tell you, all right, for ABC company and XYZ company, they are doing 3 hours of work here, 4 hours of work here. Hey, they actually spent 2 hours having a meeting with, Jim at XYZ Solutions, and if they were to have tracked that, again, not billable, then maybe you would have seen that, hey, it's more than just the work, it's the client relationship. It's about upkeeping these other things that we're not thinking about because we're not in the day-to-day like they would be.
So something that helped me, not only when I was running my MSP, but when I was working for one before that, was the explanation that before I was running my own, everything we did was, I'm going to call it break fix. We were basically selling blocks of hours to our clients based on how many hours they needed us to do stuff. It was like 2005. It's just how you did things, So back then, my argument was, okay, so I do all this work for this client. And then, like, I get it. You want me to track all that work. But then you want to know every little thing I'm doing too. So then I have to track that I tracked that work. And then I have to track that I was tracking that I tracked that work. And then it just, now my whole day is just me tracking that I was tracking, that I was tracking, that I was tracking. And my boss was like, no. That's where your brain is putting you in a weird loop because you've programmed yourself incorrectly. And when he spoke to me in like a script, it made a lot more sense. He said, when you're logging your time, you're still on the clock for that client. Like you opened, you answered the phone, and when you answered, you opened up your PSA, you created a ticket, and you started logging time immediately. And then you started asking the questions. And if, once you got good, you could ask the questions while you're creating the ticket and all that, right? And then let's say you solve it. All, it's a one and done phone call, everything's solved by the time you hang up. Okay, great. You hang up, you finish your notes, you update any documentation, and then you close the ticket.
Yeah.
And I said, oh. And then once I was done with that, then I could move on to the next thing. And that's where, it becomes really important for you to have, if, for example, maybe you've got like a dispatcher, right? So you need to have a way for the dispatcher to know which of your techs are actually available, which ones are actually still wrapping up their ticket notes from the last thing they were doing versus I'm ready for the next task or whatever. So I think there's a lot of setup that needs to go into that. And we could go down that rabbit hole, but this is not that webinar.
Yeah. I think the key thing to know too is it's important. It's important to change the mindset of you're just trying to keep track of everything that I do, or, oh my God, we're having to track every single thing we do in our 8-hour day. This is annoying. This is absurd. I would like to think about it, and I encourage everyone to think about it in a way where it's, hey, this isn't for you. This is for all of us because we're a team at the end of the day. Your notes are a reflection of the work that was done. And the better your notes are, the better your time tracking is, the better we're all able to help each other, whether it's somebody in the tech department over to somebody in the accounting department. These two departments don't necessarily speak every day, but the work that is logged is what lets us both communicate and see what happened, especially when there's a kind of billing concern. So if we think about it that way, where, hey, we want to log everything that we did, we're making sure we have clear notes. These are notes that will help you in the future as well to remember what happened. Let's just say, I don't know, sometimes I have things that I did earlier in the week that I have a hard time remembering. Like I have no idea what I ate on Friday of last week or this past weekend. I honestly can't remember what I ate, or if there was something special that I did, maybe somebody that I spoke to. Could also be because I just have a hard time remembering such small things like my food, remembering to eat. But it happens. We're all human, and there's things that we forget. And if we happen to have, the opportunity to have a system like ConnectWise or whatever PSA you're using to help you keep track of these small things, that's even better, because those small things really matter, especially if it's a client relationship, or maybe, I don't know, you remember that they had a dog last week. Oh, hey, hope your puppy's doing all right. Okay, they wouldn't have known that if maybe the note wasn't in there. Doesn't have to be, again, something super personal, but just it's the small things that matter.
Perfect. All right. So we started talking about why revenue can hide, right? So here's where MSP owners, I'm not looking for people to raise their hands, okay? I'm not looking to shame people, but
Okay, man.
this is where you have that, hard conversation with yourself. Just like Jim said earlier, if someone's only 60% utilized through their day, you're having a conversation, right? So if you have revenue hiding, maybe you don't even know you have revenue hiding. And that's where it's really hard, right? So you could have bad processes, you could have really poor note taking, like we talked earlier, like if you're still wrapping up the ticket, you're still on the clock. Your time entry is still ticking away. Finance tabs incorrect. What do you mean by that, Janette?
So sometimes when there is a quote created and there is a fixed fee for labor, I'm just throwing something out there. And then let's just say you're also billing hardware. Sometimes the project manager or the technician will go in and, because they created the ticket or the project, they will go in and modify the finance tab section in the project or the ticket to reflect whatever was on the quote. In these cases, I've seen that, let's just say the quote said it was a fixed fee. Well, they went onto the finance section and they didn't necessarily change it to fixed fee. One, maybe they didn't know, or two, they just thought that's what they were supposed to do, and they left it at actual rates. Or maybe they left it as override rate. In this example, it's going to create a billing error. So once it reaches finance, we're going to see, okay, hey, well, maybe finance never got the quote because now there is a problem with your purchase orders, your conversions, or your winning process from your quoting tool. So we don't have that information. So we're going based off of whatever's in the finance section in the ticket. We've created the invoice, and now we're seeing there's a problem. If you happen to have a review process in place, if you don't, then now you're just sending the invoice and it's wrong. So that's what creates errors in that finance section. Or it could be it's set to a fixed fee of 0, and it actually should have been billed as actual rates. So there are a couple things there that could go wrong in that finance section. You could be marking products as non-billable whenever they should be set to default or billable. Or, if the case is maybe you're offering that client a discount on something and you marked it no charge instead of reflecting a discount.
Ooh, and Jim just said, or worse, you don't send an invoice because there's an agreement tied to the project when there shouldn't be. That's a fun one.
Yeah,
That's a fun one.
things like that. And it really sucks, right? Having processes like that are just missed, and that's missed money. That's something we definitely do not want to see. And if there isn't somebody on the back end checking or, just simply questioning certain things, you would never catch that. So it's important always to make sure that you do have somebody who is knowledgeable in your PSA and does know that these are things that need to be fact checked. And then also ensuring that you do have proper procedures in place to make sure that things like these don't happen. Maybe let us shy away from a technician messing with the finance section.
Probably not a good idea. So you probably want to make sure your agreement default for new records is set up correctly. Thank you for that suggestion, Michelle. What about, you talked about work role, work type?
We did not talk about that, but we can talk about that as well. It's also important to make sure that your work role and work type are set up properly. And that ties back to Michelle's comment on your agreement being set up correctly. So you can enter all the time you'd like, but if there aren't certain exclusions made in your agreement or things to make sure that they are included as covered, then you could have billing errors there as well in your time entry. And if you navigate back to that time entry screen.
Oh, sorry. I was getting myself ready for the next part. They don't actually see it yet.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. I could tell I was distracting you.
Not working. But yeah, they're just important things that you want to make sure you get those set up properly. And in the instance where you do want an agreement to be applied, let's just say you have remote covered on your agreement and then on-site is not covered. Let's make sure that we do apply that agreement, because that's an instance where we do want to make sure we apply that so that on the invoice it reflects, hey, this remote session that you had was covered, but this on-site, on XYZ, the 31st of October was not covered, and this on-site was an hour, but we have the agreement applied to both. And this just makes it easier to make sure any kind of reporting that we want to run in the future, we can get it directly from the agreement and we know why it was not covered.
Yes. So now we're going to dig into how to find and prevent hidden revenue a little bit. So here's where I get to take you back to your screen you wanted. So for those of you who are using ConnectWise, this should look hauntingly familiar. And for those of you who are not using ConnectWise, you're welcome for not having to use it. No, ConnectWise is a fantastic platform. I've got jokes, but it's only because it is such a long-running software. I think ConnectWise has the same problem, in my opinion, that QuoteWorks does. It's been around for 20 plus some odd years, and you can just still see it. Like you look at some of the newer software that comes out today, and it's all sleek and stylish and not too much on the screen all at once. And it probably has a bazillion windows and screens you got to move through because they don't put so much on the screen at once. So they each have their merits. I just have jokes. ConnectWise is perfectly fine.
Right.
All right, so what to look for?
So in a time entry, I think I want to focus on just the notes itself first, and then we can go to the rest of the time entry. But just going down to the notes, I did 4 things on there that I absolutely think are a must. So who did you help? It is important to put on there who this person helped, because if for whatever reason, and this happens a lot, I see it, the client comes back and says, who did you speak to? Why am I getting billed for this? Barbara isn't even an employee here. I don't know who Barbara is, or whatever the case might be. It is nice to have who it is that you helped, because sometimes it could also be a different person who requested support. So it is nice to know that information if it's at all possible to include. What did you do? I feel like that's a no-brainer. We want to make sure what we put, how we helped this person, what we did, if we purchased something, if we didn't purchase something, if we were able to help them or not. Was the task completed? Tied back into, hey, is this resolved or not? And then next steps. If there is something further that needs to be taken into action, if they need another support session, if maybe you determine they need a new computer, making sure you include that on there. Going back again to a client reaching back out and saying, hey, I never approved this. I'm sorry. I'm just going to pick on Jim, just he's fresh on my mind. Jim, we actually did tell you this on October 31st that you did need a new computer. And today I'm not helping you, or it's going to be, out of scope because we told you that you were out of warranty, or, whatever the reason is. Start and end time, super important. As soon as you start to work on this ticket, make sure you open it up. Open up your time entry window. Let it do its thing. Enter your notes. As soon as you're done entering your notes, hit the end time. It's just that easy. And then your work role should default to whatever you already have in manage. So if you're doing your normal technical work, it should default to technician, or if you have other wording for it, whatever your normal verbiage for that would be. And then, your work type. What did you do? Was it out of scope? If you know, right? Was it after hours? Was it remote support? Was it on site? Do you have any kind of staff off agreements on there? If you're determining if it's going to be billable or not, usually I don't encourage technicians to change that unless it's communication. I highly encourage to just let it be. Work type should always change if it's billable or not.
Makes sense, yeah. And then your work role, now bear with me, it's been a few years since I've done this, okay? So if I recall correctly, the work role and the work type can both manipulate the hourly rate, correct?
Yes, it can. And that is very dependent also on the agreement. So if you look at the time entry example, you have a test agreement. So let's just call that your managed services agreement. Let's just say you have your work role of technician set as $125 an hour or $95, whatever your rate is. And that's covered under the agreement. So we're not going to consider that. However, your work type is out of scope, after hours, something that is actually not covered under the agreement. And your after hours rate is $300 an hour, something crazy, right? So now Manage is saying, okay, well, your work role is covered, but this work type, the type of work that was completed, is not covered under the agreement. And we're going to go ahead and bill you for this. And that's exactly what's going to be reflected on your invoice. And it is important to make sure every single time entry does have an agreement applied to it, because when it comes to these exceptions, it's important that Manage grasps that exception and understands that even though one part is covered, the second part needs to be billable at this exception rate. And if we don't have that agreement applied, often overlooked, we might not capture that exception. And that could cause a billing error.
So the next thing that you had suggested we need to fix, strengthen, would be cash flow. And this is because, sure, once you fix the time entries, that's great, but there's still other things that could be problematic, right? So how do you recommend we just strengthen cash flow?
Well, one thing that you can start off by doing, and just the note on here is just prevent misbilling or miscollections. You can use a program like alternative payments to
Oh
help
my goodness.
automate your billing processes. So send reminders, set up auto pay on there for your clients, saving their payment information, credit card information, ACH information, collecting your credit card fees.
Yes.
That.
So I'll use this opportunity. I'll give our quick like 30 to 60-second pitch. Um, so what alternative payments does is we basically help automate the entire accounts receivable process. So you'll create your invoice in ConnectWise or whatever your PSA is, and then once you sync it over to alternative payments, we can automate everything from sending the invoice to your client, collecting the payment, especially if you've already had them set up auto pay, which they can do through our payment portal that we're going to give you, so they can set up, whatever payment types they want, ACH, credit card. They can set up auto pay rules. Um, the world is your and their oyster. And then when they pay that invoice, we'll mark it paid in your accounting platform and your PSA. And then when we deposit those funds into your bank, which can be done as quickly as the next business day, we will then create the deposit in your accounting platform, which I assume is going to be QuickBooks. And then we'll even associate, like if you covered any credit card processing fees, instead of passing those on to your client, we'll include those credit card fees in the deposit. So that way everything matches. When you download your bank feed in the QuickBooks, it'll show the right number there. It'll show the right number on the deposit, and everything's happy. So if you want your accounts receivable process to get automated, let us know. And we also have some tools available to help you improve your cash flow, helping you get paid quicker. So if either of those things are at all interesting to you, I'm going to launch a little poll. You can let me know if you're interested. And while you guys fill that poll out, I would really appreciate that. We can move on. Now, you said that it's important for us to do like a proper review. Now, this is kind of like your bread and butter, right?
Yes. So I think it's important, on top of making sure your time entries are correct and all the information, or as correct as can be, and all the information is on there. I think it's important that timesheet reviews are done on a weekly basis. And I know it might sound a lot. It does sound like a lot, especially if maybe you have a team of over 50, 100, 200 people. But ideally, your department manager should be reviewing these timesheets for their department on a weekly basis. Why are we doing it on a weekly basis? It is because we want to ensure that everything is as fresh as possible in everyone's mind. Meaning, if I'm already telling you, or if I've already told you, I have a hard time knowing what I had for dinner or breakfast a few days ago, I'm probably going to have a hard time knowing what I spoke to Barbara about on Monday, and it's Monday of the following week now, or maybe 3 weeks later. Those small details get missed. If we were to complete a review on a weekly basis, now we see that this employee here in this example has 0.08 billable hours, 0.37 non-billable, and 0.45 on that week's timesheet. I
It
would
seemed like a whole lot of work.
Yes, I would immediately reject this timesheet. One, because I don't care if you're salary or hourly. You should have close to a full day reflected. That is unacceptable to me. And I feel like it should be unacceptable to you as a business owner as well. And two, I feel like this person's notes are probably not going to be very great. So if we dig on select that timesheet and select each day, we can see what they wrote. Are their notes good? Did they write on there who they helped, what they did? Was it resolved? Is there a follow-up needed? Did they follow those 4 steps? Did they not follow it at all? Is there any notes on the time entry itself? Or is it a blank entry? So having this done on a weekly basis, we can make sure we reject those and start to make expectations to your employees of this is unacceptable. We want to make sure that you follow XYZ things. Please redo. Or if you're much kinder than I am, you can say, hey, we're going to talk about this at our next 101. Please make sure you enter your notes. Something like that, right? It just depends on whatever approach you have, but I'm definitely really strict on time entry, and I feel like it's important. That review process is important. This not only helps, your team on the tech or admin side, but it also helps your finance department because this is how you get paid. This is not somebody messing up and, now they're, okay, I have to enter my time. No, this is literally how the company makes money. And it's very important, and I take that really seriously. One of the notes I have on there as well is making sure that you do not just misapprove. Going in there and seeing all this time and, all right, they submitted their time, so let me just select all of it. All of these are my approvals. And I'm just going to click on it, hit submit, approve. We don't want to do that. We actually want to make sure we click on the date range, view each day. All right, maybe they have close to 8 hours. Maybe you're not so strict, right? You just want to have at least 4 or whatever your goal is, making sure that goal is met. Then selecting each day. And again, I know it sounds like a lot, but if you're doing it on a weekly basis and it's per department, if you can, then that would be ideal. And making sure those notes are great. Doesn't take you very long. It should be maybe a 30-minute activity if you have 20 or more employees and their timesheets to review. If your team gets better at it, then maybe it won't take you so long. Or maybe you're gaining so much revenue from just checking that you can now hire someone else and delegate this task to someone else.
That's fair. Now, I did switch us over to the timesheet review.
Yes. So this is part of what I was speaking on. And when you actually select that timesheet, now we're looking at this window of per day. So we have per day, 0.32. Then on Tuesday, we don't have any hours. Then on Wednesday, we have 0.10. And then we have a total of 0.55.
Yeah.
Again, this is a timesheet for me that is unacceptable.
Yeah.
I would go in and I would reject Tuesday completely. There's no hours. Did he work? My policy is if he took paid time off, to me, anything that the company pays should be logged. If you're getting paid for a day, log it. If on
there should even be a time entry basically for me being off of work.
There should be an entry on 9/30 if you took PTO and it was paid. I strongly believe that you need to enter that in your timesheet. So you should have a work role on there that would tell you admin, holiday, PTO. I'm not sure. Maybe some people will call it vacation, things like that. You should make sure that you have that on there and log it. There is no excuse for having a 0-hour day, unless maybe you really did take a day off and you didn't get paid for it. To me, that's what that means. You didn't work and you weren't paid. But those are those kind of examples where we want to make sure that those are the things that we do not miss. Because if he did complete any kind of billable work, we will never know that now. Now it's November 11. We're not going to know if he did something on 9/30.
You're probably right. Janette, can you tell everybody what is it that you do?
Yeah.
How can you help MSPs?
So that's quite literally what I do. I go in and I help MSPs better their processes internally for things like time entry, time entry review process, establishing clear finance processes in Manage or whatever PSA system you use to make sure that your invoicing runs smoothly. So, for example, if maybe right now you don't necessarily have a process for reviewing your invoices, I can help you set that up by creating an invoice routing review process in Manage and making sure that whoever needs to review those invoices can get routed to them. We have an opportunity to review, discuss, and modify before that invoice gets sent out, whether it's monthly recurring billing or T&M billing or project billing or some kind of special down payment or progress billing on a project. Anything like that I could take care of. Any agreement creation, time entry review process. So if maybe your company's not very large and you don't want to do it, maybe you're the owner doing it right now, I can make sure that we set up a process, or I can take that process over for you, and, we can establish new procedures so that in the future, as your company grows, you already have that in place. And if you do hire someone, we can help that person get established with the new processes as well. I also help with syncing for agreements. So for example, I'm just going to bring up Pax 8. If you have Pax 8 agreement syncing, I can help you with that as well, and making sure that you do have that proper syncing in place before that invoice for that agreement is created. Another thing that I can help with is also QuickBooks or your accounting system. So integrating both programs. So whether it's, your payment processor, working with your payment processor and integration, any kind of syncing errors. If you're using a third-party tool to sync over your invoices, just throwing out Mobius, WiseSync. I can help you with any of that as well. And then your month-end close, everything regarding your financial system, we can help with.
Perfect. I'm just gonna throw out another shameless plug. If you're using Mobius or WiseSync and you are unhappy for any reason, Alternative Payments now does ConnectWise to QuickBooks Sync. So let us know about that too. So basically, Janette is a bookkeeper. However, she is a bookkeeper who focuses on MSPs and understands how the PSA needs to be configured, how your accounting platform needs to be configured, and is able to help you dive in a little bit deeper than just simply, putting your charges and linking them to the appropriate accounts in your accounting system. So if you are interested in a conversation with Janette to see how her company could help your company, I do have a poll up so that way you guys can answer that. This was good, Janette. Now, we talked about a lot. We talked about, gosh, I almost have to look at my notes. We talked about finding and preventing hidden revenue. And it sounds like a lot of it boils down to time entries. Now, once you've got the time entries happening, the time entries could still be problematic. So we should be doing a timesheet review weekly. And one, you're looking to see, are they actually submitting their entries? If you've got days where it's just not adding up to the right amount of hours, then you can address that. And if you're doing it weekly, now you're not like super behind on billing and rushing and then causing stress and chaos and everything else for everyone, right? So if you do this weekly, the other nice thing is it's fresh in their mind.
Exactly.
And then two, let's say they do all their time entries. You need to review them one by one. I'm sure there's an easy-ish way to do that without going through each ticket, right? But you need to review them and make sure that they have the appropriate work role, the appropriate work type, that they have the appropriate agreement attached, if there should be an agreement attached, and And you also need to make sure that the agreement is configured correctly to make sure
Exactly.
that it is billing or not billing for the correct roles and types, right? And then you also need to verify whether the agreement's there, whether the agreement's set up right or not. You need to make sure that the billable field is set up correctly on each of those entries. And then you need to review the notes. As your MSP grows, you're going to start using the work roles and the work types in, well, let's just say, new and creative ways, right?
Mhm.
So maybe you've got tier one or an L1 tech, and then you've got L2, L3. Maybe you've got advanced engineers, networking guys, people who all they do are structured cabling. The list goes on, right? And you might decide you're going to build differently for different roles. Well,
Yep.
so that's the other thing you need to watch for. Did this guy put the correct role? Because that role alone could be changing or modifying somehow the base pay rate of what the client is paying you per hour. So there's a lot to look at just around the time entries
Mhm.
and around reviewing your time sheets.
Exactly. And that's why it's also important to make sure that that review process with invoices is also established. Because even if you have a proper review process for your timesheet, once you reach that invoicing stage, having somebody who is knowledgeable with all the exceptions in your agreements and rate, work roles, work types is important at that stage, just because that's another point where we can catch a mistake. That's another point where we can say, okay, here is this section that we can make sure we update before this invoice is sent out.
Yeah.
In the actual invoice, in the time tab, in the products tab, or expenses, whatever you're looking at, you can actually look on there and see if something is billed at a different rate, if something is applied against the agreement or not, even though the agreement is actually applied. So things like that could be helpful to know. And if you don't have somebody who can go through a proper review in that specific section of each invoice, it's not going to work. It is important. It is really important to make sure you understand what you're looking at.
100%. And we even have, you know, we talked earlier about, oh, well, what if they're salary? What if they're hourly? Um, you even put together a slide just for that, which I
Yes.
realized we did not go over.
Yeah. So if we look at the example on the left side, there is a column called work item. So all of the ones that say service are a service ticket. There is a project ticket on there and the charge codes. So the charge codes could be PTO, could be admin, it could be a holiday, maybe they took sick time, whatever it is. But this is a perfect example of how a perfect timesheet should look like. On one day, Monday, he has service ticket, he has project, and he has a charge code. Those 2.79 hours, let's just say they're admin work. I don't really care, right, that he does admin work. I just want to know what he did. If he spent 2 hours checking emails, fine. He spent 2 hours checking emails. That's what he does. 2 hours doing a procedure like an SOP document, fine. But there are 8 hours on there. Now, this is a perfect example because now if I wanted to run a report for whatever reason on this employee or this department, I would be able to do so. And I will feel confident that the numbers are right because his timesheet is ideal. It is literally the most perfect timesheet. And 1024, there's 8 hours on there. I can't see on this in the snip, but we could probably assume that's probably going to be PTO. And he more than likely got paid for it, since again, the rule is if they got paid for it, it should also be reflected on a timesheet, which plays a part in payroll entry. So in your accounting system, I'm just going to say we're using QuickBooks Online. If you're using QuickBooks, are you actually dividing your payroll entries as they should be by the actual work completed. So meaning technical, admin, owner pay, under wages, that same tier under taxes. If you're not doing that, then this could be why you're not actually drawing the percentages or splits between the work that is being done. Now, this is something that is totally something you would do as a bookkeeper, and I feel like it's best practice to do so because this will give you real recognition in your P&L. So, for example, this employee, I would say he works 40 hours a week. Payroll is 80 hours. I would divide the amount of hours by the percentage of total hours worked for that project, because I want to make sure that goes under project, my project bucket in my P&L. And then everything else would go under the other salaries or wages bucket. But this specific project revenue, I want to track that. I want to track my project revenue, my project salaries. If you have subcontractors, I'm trying to track that because I want to make sure I'm profitable, and I want to make sure that I am better at quoting if I need to get better, or did I totally miss the mark, right? Things like that in that division can really make a difference, especially if you're including your own owner wages in payroll, making sure those aren't included in your normal technical salary wages, breaking those out, especially with taxes too.
Ugh, taxes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this was fantastic. Janette, thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
learned some things. I hope you all learned some things. And even if you feel like you knew everything, hopefully this was a good refresher, a reminder for you, or that swift kick in the pants that you needed to make sure you guys are following all of your processes that you developed months or years ago. You know, whatever you got out of this, I hope it was positive. And thank you, everyone, and thank you, Janette.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, guys, does anyone have any questions for Janette before?
Or Steve. Bless you.
Excuse me, sorry. Those sneezes are coming out of nowhere right now. It's the fall
season.
allergies. It is. So yeah, if anyone has any questions for Janette, I mean, I'm happy to answer questions too. But if it's about payroll and time entry and that kind of stuff, I probably shouldn't. So, and if not a big deal. We can wrap up here in just a moment. And yeah, next week. Oh man, this week we have so much going on still. So tomorrow, for those of you who haven't heard, alternative payments made an acquisition. And tomorrow we are doing a webinar where we introduce you to Danny. He is, I don't want to get it wrong. I want to say our GM of data and analytics. Sorry if I got it wrong, guys. But we're going to introduce you to him. We're going to talk more about the insights and data that Delmar Insights is able to bring. And we're also going to talk about our vision on how we plan to integrate the two platforms. And then on Thursday, we have another webinar coming up with Brian Doyle from VCIO Toolbox. We're going to talk about quarterly business reviews and how to make them more useful and not suck. So, I really encourage you guys to check those out. If anyone has any other questions, they think of something after we wrap up, don't hesitate to respond. I'm going to send out a follow-up email tomorrow about this webinar. Thanks again for watching, everybody. Thank you, Janette. And you all have yourselves a great rest of your day.
Thank
Take
you,
care.
guys.